Hi, I have the pleasure to meet one of my lifelong friends, with whom I had the pleasure and the honor to work for a period of about a year. And he is one of the nicest people that I've met. And he's an optometrist and a very good one. And also an open-minded optometrist. He's also a PhD in psychology. And the big title he has now is that he is the dean of the Syntonic College. So, Ray, hello to you.
I'm Meir.
So, tell us what is Syntonic, because I said Syntonic by mistake. What is Syntonic? Most people probably don't know what it is, but it's wonderful.
Okay, well, syntonics is an optometric technique of using light, visible light, as a therapy. The light is derived from filters, usually in a device that allows you to look at a lighted surface that then goes into the eye. So it's focused into the eye, onto the retina, and all the blood vessels in the retina. And it causes there to be physiological changes that affect everything from cognition to energy to health to pain relief. Used a lot in our field with learning disabled kids, with people that have had head injuries or emotional trauma, and also certain pathologies.
So that is so interesting to just tell all the audience what Ray is telling us. And just want you to know, Ray is a great specialist in vision as well. Is that looking at colors with the machines he's talking about can affect the internal parts of your body and can affect your state of mind and can affect the function of your brain. So here's my question to you, Ray. Can you give us some explanation, or is there no explanation, of how come looking at colors affects all those internal parts of the body?
Well, it's pretty complicated, or the simple answer would be that light that we think of the light that hits the eye and the retina as being visual, that it pertains to vision, to seeing. But there's a part of the information that goes up that affects other places in the brain that are kind of central places for the endocrine system, for the certain balancing systems. So it's like control centers in the brain for certain types of hormones or for certain types of neurotransmitters and so forth that actually affect a large percentage of things that go on in the brain and even the organs in the body.
So let me ask you a question. Is looking at light like the blue sky, the green or blue ocean, the white waves, does that affect the body as well?
Absolutely. I mean, all of life is based on light, whether it's plant life, single cell animals, bacteria, light, and mammals and primates and humans. It's really a light-based system. Light gives us the energy. Light interacts with matter. They're both similar in certain ways and can cause changes at the cellular level. It's the study of it has been around for the use of it has been around for millennia, but mainly in the latter part of the 1800s and especially starting in the early part of last century, there have been research developed. In fact, syntonics was explored and experimented with in the 1920s, and in the 1930s, the device was built. There are new devices besides the original one And in 1933, the College of Syntonic Optometry was formed. And during that period, there was a lot of work done uh, um, on the use of light as a healing technique. The second prize in the Nobel Prize was given, and I think it was in 1903 or 1902, to somebody using light as a therapy to cure disease that had never been cured before, called acne vulgaris, a type of tuberculosis of the skin. And that kind of triggered this early interest in light that took place in the early part of the century. But more recently, since around 1970s, more and more research is being done, and it's a real accelerating field. New journals all the time, major organizations, articles in major scientific journals as well as specialized journals that are really showing more and more the central role that light plays uh, in every part of our being. It's really
Interesting. So, is there a difference of somebody who lives in the equator, where you have day and night in specific hours, or somebody who lives in Alaska, where you have sometimes a very long day and sometimes a very long night?
yeah, I can't tell you exactly what they are, except that a lot of what happens in our health and in our bodies is called circadian rhythms. And these are rhythms that are generally based on light, when the light sets and when the light comes back. And in modern times, for human beings, we have light at night. And so that some people are really affected in a negative way by light at night because it throws off these circadian rhythms, these day-long rhythms, uh, and causes sleep problems and depression and so forth. And light therapy is one of the places where light therapy is used a lot, and maybe the most accepted area, one of the most accepted areas of the use of light as a
Yeah,
healing.
I once had a client who had a problem of sleeplessness for mental reasons, and I massaged her in the sun, and it was one of the reasons that she was able to go back to sleep well. And the psychiatrist offered her a lot of drugs, and she didn't take them, and being at light in the light made a big difference.
Absolutely, yes.
So, can you explain to the people? I mean, you look at it as a matter of fact. I must say that two of my best practitioners have studied syntonics and probably meet you in many conferences there. Can you explain to our audience what is the process of syntonics? If somebody came to you, what would you do with them? What kind of colors you'd show them? For what reason? And what machines would you use?
Well, essentially, as an optometrist, of course, we're looking at vision. But first of all, we take a detailed history, medical history, and symptom history. And so, and we also take certain measurements. Some are specialized to syntonics, and one of them is called the visual field, which is something a lot of people know about because it's a central measuring device for glaucoma, for brain injuries, for stroke, certain uh, types of losses of light. And we use a device. So a visual field is when a person looks at one spot and then you bring a target in from the side and they have to see it without moving their eyes. Tell me when you first see this circle or
So,
this.
so let me repeat what you said. As a doctor, the first thing you do is you measure the field of vision that they have to see that they didn't lose any part or to see if they lost any part.
That's correct. So what we find in a lot of the patients that come to us complaining of light sensitivity, learning problems, memory problems, reading problems, not feeling right after a stroke or after a head injury, for example, or birth injuries many years after the birth injury. Um, and so we measure the field, and normally a field will be about this big, if you can see me. But sometimes with the people that we're dealing with, they'll have a visual field that's only that big.
So just to say to people, Ray have expanded his arms all the way to the side, and then he just closed the distance between his index and thumb, have shown that some people have that little of a field.
That's correct. And so that's one of the things that we're going to look at as a diagnostic, but also mainly or importantly as a measure to indicate whether the person has improved or not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like a pretest, and we prescribe a color, and then we measure it again after maybe 6 or 7 treatments, and we can then see whether or not it's having an effect on the visual field. The other thing we look at is the pupil reflex. So we put a light in the eye and we hold it there and we look to see how long a person's pupil can stay constricted with the light. And so that's another test that we would use, plus the symptoms.
So you check the pupillary reflex, which means you shine light in a person's pupil and you see how long it can be contracted. And everybody should know that when light is shined on people's pupils, they contract. At night they expand, in the dark they expand, but when there is light in your pupil, it contracts.
Yeah, that's right. Would you like me to put a PowerPoint on so I can talk about these things?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Let me see if I can remember how to do it. Oh, that's not it.
But our time is short, so I just want to move on. If you are still looking at the PowerPoint, I just want to move in. There's Syntonic photography. Very good.
Phototherapy.
Yeah.
Let me just view it as a.
I want all the audience to try and click and find the Syntonic phototherapy, right?
Okay, so there you go. And so it's light therapy through the eyes. These are other pathways besides the visual pathways that light through the eye can affect. A chart made of by Jacob Lieberman. So here's the device, the original device, and somebody looking in the device to take a color treatment. This is what they would see. They would see, in this case, a red light with a black background, and the light comes from a light bulb that goes through filters, and then there's a frosted lens, and then they're sitting about 2 feet away and looking at the light.
Wonderful. And how long do they do that?
So the treatments are usually for 20 minutes, although they can be different, but the general length. Usually the filters are given as pairs of filters. So it would be red and yellow or green and yellow combinations, red and magenta. So there's several ones. I'll get into what that is. So they might look at one color or a combination for 10 minutes and another one for another 10 minutes in the treatment. So the treatments are from 3 to 5 days a week, and generally it's for 20 sessions. We have a progress check to see about the visual fields, to see if there's any changes in the symptoms, see if the pupils get stronger after about 7 days, 6, 7, 8 days, to determine whether the choice of filters that we decided on, that we diagnosed or prescribed, is the correct one. And if it doesn't, then we reevaluate and try a second tier of colors. And then at the end.
So you study a person in the field rather than decide always in advance what to do with it.
Well, we decide on the basis of, whether this, say a child comes in. So I had a patient like this, and they'd been kind of hyper, and uh, they couldn't really get a really good uh, diagnosis because she had so many things wrong. She was so hyper, I couldn't even evaluate her. And but she had been born with the mother had a problem in the birth, in the pregnancy, preeclampsia it's called, and the child was born with the cord around her neck, and she'd had some traumatic experiences in her life, and she'd always been like that, this hyper person that could talk but not about anything present. She was at the age, she was 6 years old, and I thought, well, maybe she's got a long-term problem. It's certainly long-term because she's had it all over her life. So let me give her the color for toxic and long-term conditions, chronic conditions, which is a yellow and green combination. I sat her down in front of the device and with her mother holding her on her lap, her grandmother reading her stories, and the child screamed like you wouldn't believe for 20 minutes, the whole treatment. Next time she came in the next day, the same thing happened. The same thing happened the next day. On the fourth day, she came in, she looked around, looked at me. I just happened to be coming into the waiting room at that time. And she looked at me and said, "Nice flowers," talking about the flowers on my receptionist desk. And she sat down in front of the device, waiting for us to turn the device on. No screaming, huge change in her behavior. School called me. They were ready to kick her out of school because she was totally disruptive. So those kind of miracles can happen. It can't be.
So they decided not to kick her out of the school because she became better, right?
Not kick her out of the school, no. And people called me for months saying, the relatives, thank you, what you've done for this girl. And it was amazing. So that was a chronic condition. So I decided to use that yellow-green combination because that's what is generally called for. And I'll get to that in a minute. See, these are the some of the colors, the basic ones. You can see that this is the colors that come through. You don't see this in color, but it's the wavelengths of light that are showing up in the green amber, the red amber color combinations. So it's brain injury, high fever, toxemia, hypoxia, emotional traumatic, pregnancy and birth insults, headaches and eye strain, cross-eyed and wall-eyed problems, amblyopia, eye pathology, and attention, learning, and reading problems.
And amblyopia is lazy eye, for people to know.
Well, lazy eye doesn't describe it. It means that something in that eye's ability to interpret information is poor. So instead of seeing 20/20, they might see a best 20/200, even with the best correction. So the eye is, maybe it's lazy, but it's because of some developmental problem or genetic problem or other kind of problem, which with vision therapy and also with the light therapy can be helped a lot, sometimes back to normal. So
so we have about 2 more minutes for our interview, and you have a lot of information. Can you describe to us one other wonderful case that you had with Syntonics?
well, the first child that I saw, I'd seen several adults. This was before I met you, Meir, back in 1976, I think. And so she came in. She'd had fallen off of a fence. She was 9 years old. She fell off of a fence when she was 5. And after that, she kind of withdrew. She was very, she refused to go to school, very unemotional, just kind of sat around. And so I did a eye movement test, which is you look at a round ball and you say, can you keep your eye on this ball? And I would move it slowly back and forth or in a circle. And she would see, and I would look at her eyes to see whether she could follow that ball, which most people can do, but she couldn't do it well at all. And then I said, well, here's another ball. Here's the red ball and here's a green ball. Look at the red ball and now look at the green ball. She had the hardest time moving off of the one. So I thought to reach the other. It was like she was searching, but it took her a while to find it. Whereas most people would just move right over to the other ball. So I thought maybe she has one of these tiny fields. She indeed had a field that was about a half an inch in diameter. And so I started around a color. Um,
A very, very small field of vision, right? Yeah.
tiny, tiny tunnel vision, one of the worst, smallest ones I'd ever seen. And anyway, so after about a week, her mother said that when they were driving, the daughter looked at the dashboard and said, "What does that say, Mommy?" And the mother said, "It says gas." And don't let me, I'll bet that says oil. And then she looked up and saw a billboard and said, "Oh, Coca-Cola." And she started acting as if her visual field had opened up. And so she just got better and better after that. And went back to school. The mother wrote me a really nice note a month later, said, my daughter has not been affectionate in years since the accident. She came and sat on my lap and said, Mommy, I love you. It still brings tears to my eyes.
That is
So,
so touching. Yeah. So, wow, those colors. So, I would like to thank you very much, Ray. And we had the pleasure to interview the Dean of the Syntonic College. I think that all of our audience would love to hear this. Thank you very much.
okay, thanks, Meir.